All right. So you never know if you're going to run into a disaster and need to cook from a pantry. So tonight's all about cooking from a pantry. Granted, you may not have fresh things down the line if you were in a power failure or something, but at least we're going to try and put stuff together that comes from typical food pantries. One sec, I got to pull out some cookies that we made earlier. So here's what your cornflake cookies will look like. They do spread quite a bit. So when we roll them out tonight, make sure we give enough space. Okay. So what we're going to start with first, we're going to break up the ramen. So we're going to start with that ramen salad first, and sunflower seeds and almond halves. We'll do that and get those toasted. Keep your packet. Hang on to this, and we're going to break up our ramen. And you can use this. You can actually use your flat for both the cookies and for the ramen. So I'm just gonna break this up because we're gonna toast it. I mean, you could actually keep it in the bag and hit it with something if you want. That'll break up. And then we'll add the almonds and sunflower seeds to it. I would say if you're going to toast this, watch your time. Just check them because your seeds will burn. Both of them will burn. So just keep an eye on your time. Spread it out. You have a bag of almonds, sunflower seeds that you're going to put together with this. So I'm just going to dump it together. Okay, so we're going to put that in the oven I'm going to start with 10 minutes. And then we'll go from there. We'll check it. So right now, these are kind of, what's a good word? Flimsy? I didn't want to say that, but yeah, they're a little bit lightweight. So just caution when you're holding on to it because it can pretty much bow. So put it into your oven and we're going to toast those we're going to start with 10 minutes and then we'll go back and check it. While that's working, we can get together the dressing. What's that? One more time? 350. Okay, so another bowl. We'll get together the olive oil. And we'll get the white vinegar, which is in here. So actually, if you look at this, you can see the layers. So this is vinegar and this is oil. Flip that. So vinegar, oil on the top because oil has less density, so it'll float. So we're going to use olive oil vinegar mix. You're going to add the mixture of seasonings. Does it say on that one? That one is NOV, so November. Noodle olive oil vinegar. Okay. We're getting smarter in our labels. So yeah, just get all that out. Then you have NSP, which is noodle salt pepper. Oh, sugar pepper. And we're going to use that. And guess what? We're going to use this leftover seasoning packet. And if you want to, it wasn't salty. We actually didn't taste this one yet, so I can't actually say. If you're worried about salt, you could probably pinch some off and use part of it. We're going to mix that together. And I can start it whisking it, but it's going to separate before we put it together. But you'll just mix it up. And eventually we'll use this over the top of our salad and noodle mixture that's cooked. So right now we have a really good emulsion. If it separates before we use it, we can just whisk it back up again. But that will be your seasoning or dressing. If you wanted to taste it now and check in and see if you want to add the rest of the salt packet from the ramen, you can do that as well. I'll take my half of a packet of chopped salad mixture and put it in a bowl. That way it's just ready to go when everything is well done and put together. We're going to let those, I didn't time my kitchen timer. I think I'm like at least 7. We'll check. I'd rather not burn them and go too far. So we'll do a short time and go back. So you can put that into a packet. Okay. So this and my dressing I'll set aside. And then we'll start on the fried rice. So fried rice tonight is going to use your, instead of Spam, we gave you Vienna sausage. Okay, so all of us were very, it's like, oh, is this going to taste good? We didn't even notice the difference because if you cut it small enough, you're not going to see the difference so much. You might need to add a little more salt to it, but again, it's up to you in the end. And I'm actually going to keep 1 onion aside for my salad, which I'll chop in a little bit. But we're going to get our carrots and our Vienna sausage and everything ready to go. And then that will be ready for the rice. And hopefully everybody cooked their rice ahead of time. The carrot. The missing carrot. So if you have carrots at home or you have peppers or you have anything you want to add, that is one thing that got missed in your packet. We do apologize. So if you have anything that'll add its color, it's going to be a nice color. So if you have anything to add for that, you can definitely do that. But since I have a carrot, I'm going to wash my green onions. And I'll go ahead and wash this one too. Just get these washed up. And again, you don't have to use all that. We can cut off anything that looks kind of rough. Oops. All right. So we're going to take like 1.5, depending on how big your green onions, kind of split it between both the salad and the fried rice. So I'll peel this real quick. You don't have to peel your carrot. You can leave it without being peeled. And again, if you're using like a pepper, you can use a pepper as well. So let's get our onion and our carrot cut up. Again, if you're going to keep the bottom part and use it to grow again, just leave some roots on the ends. Cut off any kind of wilty spots. And then you should be able to go cut. And I think just because of how long these are, I was told once, if you ever get really long green onions, that means they're grown locally. If you get ones that are stubbed off like here, that means they're coming from the mainland. So if you ever go to the grocery store and you see the really long ones, you'll know that they're from here in Hawaii versus being shipped from the mainland. So I will I'll cut my onions. I cut off my edges and I'll cut my end here and keep the fuzzies. So again, you can do straight across. You can cut, if you cut diagonally, you'll give yourself that nice teardrop shape versus straight across. So you'll have a nicer visual there. Again, it's trying to get those all cut up. Watch your fingers when you cut your onions, and they're just going to cut the whole thing. If this looks like too much onion, then you can definitely put some towards your salad as well, or garnish. Either way. And these are scallions compared to, we're going to use a yellow onion that we're going to chop up as well. So we actually have a decent amount of onion in this dish, which is great stuff. This is actually going to go in towards the end. So I'm going to keep it further off my cutting board. And then I'm going to cut up the regular onion because we're going to add that with the carrots together. So I'll cut off my, you have a half an onion plus like a couple of extra, a little quarter, because our volume didn't look quite enough. So you have a little extra. So I just lined up my pieces and cut it. I diced them across. Again, it's kind of what you want to have, how big you want to taste, but we can always cut it after the fact too. There we go. And then I'll do one more cut down the center. That's going to go in with our carrots. So here's your half an onion. And remember, if you want to make a diced onion, make it fairly one shot. We're going to cut along the grain of our onion. So you're going to cut the lines this way with the knife. Get some of this off. I think I'll cut one of these. And they're going to get soft when you cook it with the rice. So don't worry about the giant size, but I'm going to cut this way, kind of with those grains. I think my sunflower seed almond mixture is just about ready to check again. Okay, so I went with all the grains. I'm going to put it kind of back together like a puzzle. And then I'm just going to go down the line and cut. And as you get towards the end of your root end, you can flip it to however it's comfortable to cut that last part. Okay. So there's our chopped onion. Now we need to do our carrot or whatever else you want to add to your mix. Cut it in a couple segments. I'm going to cut it in threes, kind of like sticks first. Let me check my, oh, those actually look really good. I think we caught them. We want to go, it depends, you know, you're toasting them to your preference. Maybe 2 minutes. I'm going to try 2 more minutes, but I don't want them to go too far. Again, it's your preference on darkness on your mixture there. So I made sticks. Oops, I got this one. I need to, so I cut the stick, cut the carrot into thirds. Then I'll cut them across. Watch your fingers. And then we're going to chop this. So we're going to basically make like if you were to buy peas and carrots frozen, it's kind of the texture I was going for. And I was trying to do all about the same textures or sizes so that they all cook about evenly. That one's real small. So then come up, line them all up. If you line them all up, then you can cut across one time. Oops. Some of them might come apart, so we'll get them all cut up eventually. Okay. There we go. There's your carrots. So your carrots and onion come together and they're going to actually cook together for that fried rice. We have ginger. You should have one big giant piece of ginger. So basically take a spoon and just go across the edges and it should peel fairly quickly, easily. That's really the trick to peeling ginger is use a spoon. You don't have to worry about trying to get a peeler around all those knobs. So I'll salvage that. And then I'm going to chop this up. So I'm just going to cut it and mince it into a few pieces. So I did 3, however you want to mince. I did like 3 slices. And I can line it up. Again, anytime you can line stuff up, you're going to save yourself some time. because everything will come together. Is anybody cooking with us tonight? I forgot to ask. Do we have any cookers? The other thing too is this recipe you can modify. If you're not game for that Vienna sausage, then you can put anything in or just leave it out. It's still fried rice. Anybody cooking with us? Can't see anybody cooking tonight. All right, that's okay. Then I have my Vienna sausage, and there's my, we're gonna multitask and get this one out of the oven. Yeah. So those are nice and toasty. You can also smell them. I'm not going to turn my oven off because your temperature for your cookies is also 350. So I'm just going to move this out of the way for a second. And you don't have to use your parchment paper because these won't stick to there. We're going to use the parchment paper that you got with your cookies. Okay, so I'll set this on the side for now. Those will cool. And then we'll keep cutting our, into our Vienna sausage. So keep your green onions separate. And we're going to cut the Vienna sausage. So where did Vienna sausages originate? Anybody know?
Angel Lingus.
Oh, very good.
And so is Billy.
Cool. Anybody know where Vienna sausages? Oops, I need to pull it into. Drain them. Vienna sausage is parboiled, usually pork. And then they use a casing, like sometimes they've used animal intestine, sometimes they've used synthetic and then taken them apart. But in the Vienna sausages, they took that casing off. So they're more like hot dogs, right? And then I always put my lid back into there so it doesn't cut your bag. But we're going to cut these up too. So what I did was cut them in half. So they're in half. And then we're going to cut them in thirds. And again, I'm trying to get similar shapes to all of this. So I'm going to cut thirds. Oops.
What is synthetic casing?
Synthetic, I guess they would, maybe a vegetable source or like I don't know. But they've not necessarily done as much animal casings. The animal intestine was what they would use typically. So a lot of sausages were used, stuffed into a casing like that, just because it was easy to utilize the whole animal. And the other thing too with sausage, it was really about whatever leftover pieces are not viable, and then they would blend them up and then create that sausage. So that's really what sausage truly is just that mix of added things or whatever was left on the animal. So I have kind of similar sizes again. Okay. Then you don't bite into a giant piece of Vienna sausage.
Can you get a vegetarian?
You actually can. We looked it up. We found there are vegetarian, vegan, vegetarian, vegan, and I think that was the two. Oh, flex, they called it flexitarian for the other group. But all of those, they do have a vegetarian. They have vegetarian hot dogs. You can buy tofu variety hot dogs. So you can really, again, this recipe can be used with anything. We were just trying to utilize what most times food banks will have on stock. And if you ever had, like, you're packing for an emergency, right? We have hurricane season coming up. You think about what you put in storage. So whatever is shelf stable and you can put in there, some things last forever. These are one of the things that lasts a very long time. But if you wanted to use Spam, you could also do that. So one more Vienna sausage to go, and that's ready to go. And then we'll wait for, actually we can start the oil and stuff. So we are going to, hopefully you have cooked rice. So day old rice works a bit better just because it's not quite as sticky as it is when it's fresh. If you have a nonstick pan, that's advised just because it won't stick quite as badly. But if you don't have a nonstick pan, that's fine too. The oil will help with that a bit. And we're going to try and create it with that nonstick pan. So you have eggs. Let's get that ready to go. You have 2 eggs, which are going to go into there. And then we have our rice. So I'm going to actually show you a trick that one of our former professors, Dr. Joni Dobbs, she's been my mentor. And she taught me how to do fried rice. One of the first things I ever learned with her when I first started. So I'm going to crack these over the sink. So I'll teach you how she taught me how to do the eggs in the fried rice so that you get that kind of, you can see the eggs more than they don't get lost. Okay, so we have our rice. I'm going to blend up my eggs a bit with another fork. I'll use this. We're going to mix up. I always mix my eggs first, and it does say to mix them, right? So we're going to mix that up. You have RVO and you have RS. So this is what we're going to use. This is your olive oil. This is the seasoning blend of mixture, and then your peas will go in later. So we're going to flip my recipe. We're going to get our olive oil warm in our pan, and I want to get to back. So I did it on 5. You want to get it fairly hot. We're going to add our oil, get that cooking, get it warm. So get that hot. That away. And then we'll add, the first thing we're going to do is add the, we're going to add the ginger first. So I kind of tried to keep them all in little separate piles. So we're going to add the ginger. We're going to let that stir fry for a minute, and then we're going to add the cooked or the Vienna sausages. Oh, I didn't. So every month, the Newman Center, which is located right behind AgSci, every month they donate their parishioners group donate to a food, like they bring in every month, they drop, their group brings in and they drop, and I go pick it up, and then we take it to the food stack over at CTAR. So that's where the ramens come from, the cereals come from, your canned soups, your canned chicken, your canned tuna, canned veggies. I would say 90% of what goes over to that food stock is coming from the Newman Center. So at some point during the year, we're going to have everybody do a big sign off. And then we're going to take a picture of everybody that's in CTAR that's partaken in that. And then we're going to drop it off at the Newman Center, because they've done this now before I was here. So it's been going on for about 5-6 years. So every month they drop off things. And so that's how this all started, as far as trying to get ways to cook what they drop off. Okay, so how do you know your oil is hot? Anybody know how your oil is hot? How do you test? How would I know my oil is hot? Kelly, I don't know if you can come over and get I don't know if it'll show. Can you see a shimmer in the oil at all? Yeah, you can. You know it's hot when it shimmers like that. The other thing you can do would be, stick a wooden utensil or stick something in the bottom, stick something in. My rice is not like stir frying very well, but you'll see it kind of start bubbling. So I'm going to give it a little bit more time. But you're starting to get hot once it has that shimmer. What you don't want to do is ever put large amount of water into a frying pan of oil, because it will be more of an explosive example versus just something subtle. So just put something real simple in and give yourself that chance to wait for it to kind of bubble up. Okay, so we're going to wait just a few more minutes on that. Starting to get there. Yeah, you can see the rice start to bubble. Yep. Okay, so we're gonna add the ginger first. Like my segmented board here. So we're gonna get the ginger off. And it should start sizzling. Oops. We'll get that going. And I'm gonna grab the, whoops, wooden spoon. So you got your ginger. We're gonna do that for about a minute. Looking good. And then it's going to turn fragrant too. You're going to smell that quite a bit. And then we'll add our Vienna sausages. And depending on if you want your Vienna sausage crispy, kind of, you're going to let it cook a little bit longer. So we'll add the Vienna sausage that's been chopped up. And by now you should start to smell your ginger cooking. So we'll add these next. Oops. Runaway carrots. All right. So I'm going to get that to cook, and I'm going to let these cook just a bit. So I want them to get crispy. So we can actually turn our heat up a bit. I'll turn it up to 8, like 8.5, and we'll see how we get. We want to get that nice and kind of toasty on the edges. That will help. And fried rice, the earliest we know about fried rice was actually found in the Sue dynasty in 589 to 618 CE. So we have done fried rice. Fried rice has been around a long time. Stir frying of the fried rice was recorded earlier. So in the Ming dynasty, 1368 to 1644 CE, that technique started to be really popular. So historically, it's been around a long time. You know, we think about how many different ways they've done fried rice and what they could put in it. Again, it really, fried rice is rice with anything extra. It's kind of like throw in the kitchen, throw in whatever is in your refrigerator and you fry it. And so that was where fried rice came from. So it's been around a long time. When we talk about some of the ingredients that are in there, like fish sauce, what is fish sauce really made from? Does anybody know? Well, we always buy it at the store, but what is it made from? Somebody's going to say fish. What kind of fish would we get to make fish sauce? And there's so many varieties out there. There's actually some favorites based on chefs, but what do you think, what fish do we start making fish sauce with? I'll let that cook some more. Any ideas? That's like a thought question. It's a small fish. And then we salt it really heavily. And basically, when you salt anything that's fresh, you're going to start pulling the juices and everything out. So eventually it drips and it becomes this sauce that comes down to the bottom. And so then you have the leftover. Anchovies? Yeah, it's anchovies. So they use anchovies a lot for fish sauce. And of course, what are some other names for fish sauce? I don't know if anybody knows this. I don't know if anybody in our group would know this. What's another name for fish sauce? Because you might hear this or see it in a recipe.
Patis.
Yeah, patis. So Philippines, patis. Bagaong, if anybody's heard that before, that's the paste that they make with it. So again, that's kind of another product of the anchovy and salt pack. So if you don't like fish sauce, which a lot of people are like, the smell is pretty bold. If you don't like fish sauce, soy sauce would work too. So it's another option for using instead of fish sauce. So fry your Vienna sausages to whatever degree you want to. If you want to get them really nice and crispy, like a bacon almost, you know, that's going to give you that kind of crispy-ish. And just like you would do with Spam. I mean, both of these are processed meats, right? They're both canned meats. So they're both kind of last forever and ever and ever, but we're going to use them for interchangeably. So you may not even be able to tell if you're used to Spam fried rice, you may not even be able to tell that it's Vienna sausage. Okay, so I let them get, you can tell they're definitely not pink anymore. They're kind of that brown reddish, and I wouldn't even let them go a little bit longer. So bagaon is shrimp or fish paste, Philippines, as well as patis. So that's kind of cool stuff. Some of the favorites out there among chefs, if anybody's ever heard of red boat fish sauce, that's number one. Mega Chef Thai fish sauce is number two. Sun fish sauce, number three. Squid Thai fish sauce, number four. Bliss bourbon barrel aged red boat fish sauce. So barrel aged in a bourbon barrel. How's that? That's another one. That's number five. And then Mega Chef Premium Anchovy Fish Sauce. So those are some of the chef's top level fish sauces that they like. Okay, I'm going to turn my heat down just a bit. We're going to add our carrots and our onions. We let that get nice and crispy. As you can see, we're going to add the onions and the carrots. Save your green onions because those are going for the end, not yet. Just get those to mix up a bit. And then they're going to cook for about 2 minutes or so. Let them kind of soften up a bit. So we'll let that go. And let's see what else I have on fish sauce. I think that was it. Usually it's a bit higher in sodium than typical soy sauce, or here in Hawaii, we know it is shoyu, but soy sauce on the mainland still coming from, what does soy sauce come from? I would think that we probably have a good idea, but I'll ask. And so you actually are going to open up your RS because you're going to use that in a little bit. So where does our soy sauce come from? If we know where patis comes from, but where do we have or fish sauce? Where does soy sauce come from? The other thing is you could make your own fish sauce. Now, be careful because the bacterial levels can get, tricky, but you could do 3 parts of fresh anchovy to 1 part salt. And then you got to leave it for a long time, like up to a year. So that's up to you if you want to wait for that long, but you can definitely have that as an option.
And who do you experiment on?
You could do, you could do all kinds of fun things. The other thing I didn't talk about yet, as far as onions, when you're cutting onions, if they're really, really strong, a lot of times that could be age of the onions. The older they are, the stronger they'll get. So you could put them in the fridge for 30 minutes before you cut them. You put them in underwater. You could cut them underwater. You can put goggles on if you want to do that. Put them in a food processor. Lots of ways to cut onions without frying. So I stir fried my onions and carrots. Looking good. I'm going to give them a little bit longer.
Yes, soy, wheat, and salt, and it comes from soybeans.
Exactly. Perfect. So we've got that going. We're going to add our rice and we're going to turn it up. This says turn it up to high as we cooked our carrots at a kind of at a medium level. We're going to turn it up to high. I'm going to go 9. I won't go too high. Let's try to watch mine. Okay, so we're going to add the rice. This is 3 cups of rice. Now this one we did cook recently, so it may be a little stickier than day-old rice, but it'll work. So we're going to mash this up. We're going to try and spread it out in the pan till it's like a thin, single, as flat to the pan as we can, and spread it out so it gets a little crispy. And then we'll add the sauce after a little bit. So we're going to let this get a little bit crispy first before we add our sauce and our onions. And our egg. We're going to get that nice and toasted. The next thing we'll start on is our cookies. So your butter should be out to have been softened. And if you forgot to pull it out, if you have, you could put it in, as long as it's still sealed, put it in a baggie and put it in warm water. You can put it in the microwave for 30 seconds, let's say 30 seconds on half power, or, 10-second increments, really, really short times, so that you can get it soft. Okay, I got that pretty much mixed. I'm going to push it down. Let it fry up a bit. I'll stir it a little bit more. We'll keep that. So that's going. Then I'll have my peas ready and my green onions and my sauce. So that'll come next. Got some onions. Okay. So I'm going to move this out of the way. We're going to get our cookie mixture stuff going. I can put my eggs over here. And so we have 2 bowls. One bowl is going to have your butter and sugar, and one bowl will have your flour. So you have cookie flour and cookie powder, which is the mixture of baking powder and baking soda. So, or what? And salt. And I'll stir my rice just a bit and see if we can get some. All right. So we're going to mix up our flour. And then you can put together your cookie powders. And I'll do a whisk. That way we can mix this up. So the one thing you really want to make sure is that those chunks of baking powder or baking soda are not too thick. I'm just going to mix this up. Now, if you don't have a blender, I'm not a blender. If you don't have a mixer, this is totally doable by hand. We're just going to get this mixed up well. And then we'll add, this is going to be added eventually to your soft ingredients. So we'll leave that on the side. Then we're going to put your butter. The butter is nice, soft. This is actually the full recipe of the cookies, and it'll make 24. Fairly good sized cookies. Okay, butter. Stir my rice. Oh, we're getting a little brown. I went up to high. Okay. So here's what we're going to do next. We're going to come back to the butter. Or do we want to get this a little browner? But it'll still keep cooking a bit on the sides. So what we're going to do, this is what Dr. Dobbs taught me, is to separate out. I'm going to turn my heat down just a bit. Make a well. You can put I'm going off a little bit off the recipe of what it talks about. I'm going to add my mixture into the eggs. We'll get that mixed in. And then I'm going to pour this into that well. In the meantime, I'm going to scramble it. That way you'll actually see the egg versus if you were to pour the whole thing over it, you may not see it as much. So we're trying to see if we can scramble that egg underneath. And then once it scrambles, then we can put it and mix it into the rice. You can see my eggs are scrambling in the center. Okay, so that's a little bit of a different flair than what your recipe talks about. And they're scrambling up beautifully. Okay. Then you can start incorporating your rice. I probably could have let them go just a little bit longer, but you still have a little bit of an egg appearance. Some of those at the bottom, pick that up. You can see your scrambled egg in there versus losing it in the rice. Okay. Oops. All right. Then it's ready for the peas. I'm gonna add my peas and my green onions, or actually I'll do my peas first, get them warmed up, and then I'll add my green onions at the end. Green onion. And that is your now Vienna sausage fried rice. And you're ready to serve it. So we had a fancy version of our rice earlier where we turned it and created it as we packed it into a bowl, and then you can invert a bowl over a plate. We have a few cilantro leaves on top, and that is what you could serve on the table. And there is fried rice. All right, I am going to pull this off the heat so that it doesn't cook any more than it is. That is done. Put off my burner. Okay, you successfully have completed Vienna sausage stir-fried rice. How about that? Now let's get back to our cookies. So we have sugars, brown sugar, white sugar. Brown sugar does make a difference. As some of you might know, brown sugar has molasses in it, more molasses than the white. So we are going to actually, brown sugar makes cookies more moist because there's more moisture in brown sugar. We always pack brown sugar when you go to measure it. You always pack it. So when you put it in a cup, if it says a cup, you want your pack when you pop it out to look just like the cup, and it should hold its form. So that's packed brown sugar. So we want to make sure you've got that packed if you're doing it at home. So we're going to mix the butter, and I started out first with a wooden spoon. We're just going to smash. I kind of smashed it up against the edges. Now it talks about light and fluffy. You're not going to get it light and fluffy doing it by hand. You would if you're doing it by a mixer, but believe me, you're going to be adequate mixing if you can combine it and make it into at least one mixture. So the interesting thing about brown sugar, besides the fact that it has moisture, if it has moisture, the one thing to do is to keep it in a moist environment, right? So luckily we have moisture here in Hawaii, but on the mainland, one of the things that we were always taught was put your brown sugar in the fridge. As crazy as that sounds, because you've got moisture in the fridge versus not in, and when I was in food services, we bought 25, 50-pound bags of sugar. So we would keep the sugar in the fridge, and then it wasn't drying out as easy. Today, they sell little terracotta rounds that you can actually put in your brown sugar, and that it keeps the moisture in. So you soak that terracotta. It's like this size. You soak it in water and you drop it into your brown sugar, or it might stick to there was some lids that have like a spot where it hooks in, and that creates moisture-free brown sugar as well. So the moisture is good for brown sugar. All right. The other thing too is a marshmallow would work, or a slice of bread. The other thing too, when you make cookies and you want to keep cookies soft, one of the tricks that you can do is put a slice of white bread in your cookie box. Like if you have a container that you're going to put your cookies in, put a slice of white bread in it, and it will keep them soft. So I'm going to try and get this to mix. And actually, I think I need a fork to mix, because I'm going to mix my egg into here. So you have a one egg mixture. You pull your egg out. Remember, I always crack my eggs over something else other than what I'm going to put it into. Oops. Thanks, Sarah. So we're going to crack this. Okay. And then we'll mix that up. As my fork will help with. And then we're going to add the egg to your mix. Okay, so we beat our butter a little bit. We're going to add the egg and the vanilla. I need to grab the vanilla. If your vanilla leaked, It's a half a teaspoon of vanilla. So I'll double check. Some of our containers, I think, might have leaked a little bit. So if you're worried, it should be a half a teaspoon. Yeah, not quite there. So I'll add just a little bit more. Remember, vanilla is one of those flavors that really makes a difference in cooking. If you forget vanilla, you'll know the difference. Okay. So hopefully if you have vanilla on hand, if not, you'll hopefully have enough that it stayed enough. And we're going to add that vanilla and then we'll add our egg. Egg mixture. And this is the one I started using a fork with, because you can really get it blended better. There's different colors of brown sugar too, right? You have dark brown, and the darker the brown, what does that mean? That's a question for everybody. What does that mean if we have dark brown sugar compared to light brown sugar? Because some recipes will actually call for dark brown sugar versus some will call for light brown sugar. So do we know what the difference is?
More molasses?
Yeah. So alternatives to brown sugar. So the difference between brown and white, you don't want to necessarily substitute white sugar for brown or brown for white. You can, but you're going to have, remember, if you do all white and not as much brown, your moisture content goes down. So you're going to have a little bit less moisture. Your texture is going to be a little bit different because sugar has a purpose for texture. It shortens gluten strands of flour, so it helps out with texture. So now you've got we pretty much whipped it up into the point where it looks like it was supposed to be. So it's kind of nice, light and fluffy at this point. Then we'll add our flour mixture. So yes, if we have brown sugar, it's ideal, but this one has both brown and white just to add that extra moisture. So now you're ready to add your flour. And this was all-purpose flour along with all our powder, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. So we'll mix this in, and we don't want to overmix it. Because if I overmix flour has gluten and flour gets tougher. So your cookies get tougher. So just mix it in to the point where you're mixed well and not over manipulating it. So our purpose for baking soda, baking powder is purely for that leavening and air that it's going to create in that mixture. And again, baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. That was the first product that people ever came up with, scientists ever came up with. And then by accident, powdered acid dropped into baking soda. And that's how baking powder was created. And today we buy baking powder that's double acting. And that double acting means that it starts getting, the leavening process starts when it gets wet or moisture, which is right now. And then it starts to activate also with the heat. So that's why we use double acting baking powder. You'll see that in most stores. Okay, so we got that blended and we're going to add cornflakes, pecans, and oats. So I have a little bit of cornflakes fun facts. Cornflakes been around a long time. It's actually the first cereal that was like one of the very first cereals out there, and it was all an accident. Oops. As I mentioned, always a lot of cooking stuff is accidental. So this one was an accident where W.K. Kellogg, 1898, and his brother, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, they accidentally put wheat berries into the roller. So remember, oats is rolled, and they accidentally put wheat berries in the roller, and they turned out to be flakes. And they thought, oh my gosh, we've just created cornflakes. That's how cornflakes started. So in 1906, Battle Creek Toasted Cornflake Company began. There was 44 employees, and they created the initial cornflakes cereal. So 1906. Here is something for my dietetics group out there. This is kind of cool. I was excited to read this. The first in 1923, the first person or the first dietitian to be hired into the food industry was hired at Kellogg's. She created, her name was Mary Barber, dietitian. She created Kellogg's Home Economic Department. That's a bit of trivia. So that is really cool. I'm proud to be a dietitian to stay working with cornflakes. And that's where the dietitian started out, in the food industry. So she was the first one in the food industry that dealt with food. And she eventually went on to work with, you know, how nutritional values and how nutrition and corn flakes and cereals and everything else play a role in our diet. So
Perfect for Women's History Month.
exactly. And that is March. So we just kind of hit a bunch of fun things all at once. In 2011, story goes on, 2011, not that long ago, right? Kellogg's committed to the fact that they were going to add vitamin D, as in dog, to all of their cereals, to kids' cereals specifically. If I'm deficient in vitamin D, does anybody know what I would suffer from if I'm a child? I don't know if I have any dietetics students out there, but what would I suffer from if I am vitamin D deficient and I'm a child? And that's why they committed to making their cereals with added vitamin D. Rickets, exactly. Rickets is like bow-leggedness. So if you've ever seen kids that kind of have bow-leggedness, that's typically they had rickets as a kid. Not always, but that's a common combination of the problems. So today they have vitamin D in their cereals. So a little bit of Kellogg's history. This is going to go on our plate that had our nuts. So let's switch back to the salad. So we're jumping all over. So I'm going to get my ramen and my almonds and my sunflower seeds. I got to stir this up again, but we're going to mix this. Is it separated? I want to turn it back into that nice emulsion, right? A whisk or a fork or something just to make sure it combines, give it a little bit of agitation so it stays together. And then I'll add my ramen, hopefully without spilling it all over the. See, and look how nice and toasted those got. Those are really just about right. You can go darker, you can go lighter. It's up to you. But those definitely got that toasty approach. And then what we'll do is we're going to put some parchment paper on top of that's what your parchment paper is for. And I will get a spoon to toss, and we actually need to cut up an onion, my last onion, which I lost I'm going to flip this cutting board over. This was all veggies and cooked stuff anyways. We have a parchment paper. We have our knife. I'm going to go in the sink. So this was washed. I'm going to cut off my edges, and then I'll peel off the bad stuff. Maybe I didn't wash this one. And then I'll cut it in half just to make it faster. Cut off my end, put that back in the garden. Right, and then I'll do my teardrop cut. Oops, I'm losing my diagonal. Go on a diagonal and you'll get a little bit more of that teardrop look. And you can use the whites. A lot of people with scallions, they skip the white part because that gets a little firmer. So we can add that to our salad. Okay. We're going to put it in our bowl. And we're going to mix this up. It's still separated pretty quickly. So stir that up at the same time you're letting it out. We'll put some of that in there to get the rest of that out. Then I'll use some, again, you don't want to like mix it too hard because you don't want those ramen noodles to break up significantly. So just gently toss it. Your dressing should coat it. You could add I think this mixture has, this prepackaged mix had cilantro and cabbage and, oh, I got a long something, onion. And I think there's even cilantro in here. So you've got a nice combination of mixture. And there is your salad. So we just took a ramen package and made it into salad. So here's your final product. So 2 dishes down. Now what you'll do with your cookies is take I would say like a heaping teaspoon. You're going to kind of roll it into your, roll it on your hand to move my thing here. So you don't want to get them giant because they do spread. So we're looking at 24, so 12 and 12, and separate them out about 2 inches if you can. You can go smaller, you can go bigger. So I have some fun facts about the giant cookie. So there is a museum in North Carolina, Flat Rock, North Carolina. World's biggest cookie was created there. Does anybody have a guess of how many pounds of ingredients? How many pounds of ingredients were used for this giant cookie? You guys can take guesses at that one. Pounds of ingredients, the world's largest cookie. It was 102 feet wide. So if maybe you can guesstimate pounds of ingredients. This is pounds. I mean, we made maybe a pound here, but how many pounds was this giant cookie? It took them a long time, you know, as we think about research and how to make things come together. Their oven itself took a very long time just to perfect the oven. They actually made an oven outside and created it from a bunch of different brainstorming, you know, and trials and errors. So they made a giant oven and it cooked this giant cookie. The funny thing was, on the day that they were about to cook it, it was downpour, like thunder and lightning and rain, just like we've had here. And so they had to wait until that passed before they could start this cooking process. And they each, they created 1 inch thick, 1 square foot slabs, 1/2 inch thick slabs. So foot wide, foot square, 1/2 inch thick slabs, 80 pounds expelled out. You know, 80, each one of those was like an 80-pound slab. Oh, that doesn't make sense. 80 pounds doesn't make sense on the slab content. But anyways, so they created all these slabs, but how many pounds of ingredients went into this whole thing? That's the question. Anybody want to guess? Oh, we're talking big numbers, guys, not small. Way over 1,000. This is a little bit of a fun, like, oh, blow your mind. How many pounds of ingredients? You go to the grocery store and you buy a pound of butter. So that's not too big, right? 40,000 pounds of ingredients made this giant cookie. So it's the world's largest cookie. And it was in North Carolina. They actually did it for kind of a fundraiser for a museum. So there's a museum now in that place for Folk Artists Foundation. So it was designed around kind of a artsy type of thing. And they actually sold, when the cookie was created, they sold individual commemorative boxes, $10 each, with that cookie. And then they raised $20,000 towards that museum that particular day. So create, like, think of your wildest imaginations and you build it and they will come. So that's where the museum came from. It didn't talk about how long it took. I would imagine they were doing it within, because you think about, we do it for 10, 15 minutes, right? They talked about it within the same day. So it actually occurred time-wise in the same day. They just laid it out really nice and thin. So there wasn't anything, remember, it's the giantest cookie, not necessarily the thickest cookie, but it was 102 feet wide. So that's pretty wide. If you think about a football field, it spans like 30-yard line to 30-yard line. So pretty big. But cornflakes have been around a long time. This meal was brought to you by the Food Stack of CTAR. So we really appreciate you joining us and have fun with your cookies. I'll show you our final cookie product. So bake your cookies at 350 for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and you can add time if you need to. But they come out really nicely and they are a bit chewy. So remember that moisture content from the brown sugar adds to that chewiness. So Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Enjoy your Monday off, and we'll see you next month for our final cooking show of the semester. Good night, everybody. Thanks.